social change. This was inspired by a friend of mine who now lives in Milwaukee and who grew up in the 1950s like I did. But I grew up in Chicago, and she grew up in rural Missouri. And she was telling me about her grandmother, who was a very unusual person, especially for those times. And those of us who were around in the 50s know that it was not cool to be unusual in any way in that era. And to be as unusual as this lady was really not cool. And I'm not quite sure how much literal truth there is in this story, but I think there is some larger truth in it that might not be literal. And I think sometimes we need to stand back and pat ourselves on the back for a moment about how far we've come and accepting people for who they are as long as they don't hurt anyone. So this is called Woman in the Woods. When my grandma turned 18 in a West Missouri town, and she crossed the sea to England for a fling, she returned in 7 years with my mother in her arms, but nobody ever saw a wedding ring. She settled in an ancient farmhouse way out in the woods. My mother married young and moved to town. And although she'd never talk about her granny on her side, I could hear the townsfolk whispering when I would come around. There's that strange woman in the woods. Now, of course, I've never met her. Some folks say that she's no good, but she healed my cousin's baby with those herbs she gathers there. I hear tell that she's the grandma of that girl child over there. Well, my mom just shook her head when I told her what I heard, and she said your granny died long years ago. Well, of course that wasn't true. I could feel it in my heart, and I knew to find my grandma I would go. One day when I was walking in the woods above the town, I found a path where no path used to be. As I followed where it led, half in bliss and half in fear, all the stories I had heard so long kept coming back to me. There's that strange woman in the woods. Now, of course, I've never met her. Some folks say that she's no good, but she healed my cousin's baby with those herbs she gathers there. I hear tell that she's the grandma of that girl child over there. When I found my grandma's home, she was waiting there for me, and she smiled with her eyes of midnight blue. We were very much alike. We were nothing like my mom. That was how I knew those tales they told were true. And as the years went on, she passed her knowledge on to me of healing plants that grew out in the woods. I would never talk about her when I went on back to town, so the whispering continued till I left that bird for good. There's that strange woman in the woods. Now, of course, I never met her. Some folks say that she's no good, but she healed my cousin's baby with those herbs she gathers there. I hear tell that she's the grandma of that girl child over there. Now I am no longer young. Now my granny's past and gone. That old house out in the woods has turned to dust. And I own this little store, reading cards, prescribing herbs for all illnesses, from colds to lack of lust. My granddaughter comes to work with me quite often after school. There is no need for lies or secrecy, for her friends all know about me, and her parents think I'm cool. my dear grandma, she would smile at the way they talked of me. There's that wise woman in the store. Oh yes, I went to see her when my elbow was so sore, and she cured my sister's migraines, those herbs she gathers there. She's the grandma of that very lucky girl child over there.
Thank you. Well,